This video is literally so important, I can't even. Because the struggle is so real, let's get to fixing it. If you feel like you're in the darkness with binge eating, then just step into the light. Drink up the tips. In this video, I'm giving you 5 tips to stop binge eating right now. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Angela, and I am here every Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to help you with your binge eating disorder, your yo-yo dieting, your ups and downs on the roller coaster of trying to reach the life of your dreams through dieting. I really want to help you overcome your struggles and challenges because I myself am walking the walk along with you. I've had a lot of feedback lately from people who say that my binge eating disorder content is truly helpful for them because they're suffering from binge eating. And if that's you, this video is really going to give you some tips, tricks, ways to stop binge eating, and also some tools and resources that I think will really help you on your journey. I will say that if you want to dive deep into why you're binge eating and how you can stop it, one book has really helped me by Catherine Hansen called Brain Over Binge. I will have a link to it in the description box below. Read that book first. It will really help explain to you why you're binge eating and the quick way of how to stop it. Now, I read that book 2 or 3 years ago. It helped me a lot. I think I stopped binge eating for about 6 weeks after I read it, but then I fell back into it because binge eating is truly a bad habit. So that's why a lot of the tips I'm going to be giving you today is from her expanded book, which is Brain Over Binge Recovery Guide. I will also have a link in the description box for you to purchase this from Amazon. And I swear by this so far, I'm like this far into it and I'm doing the work. Like I'm literally, writing down things in the book. And I think that's a huge help for me. But there are 5 tips. A couple of them are from me and 3 of them are from Catherine Hansen. So I'm giving you these tips because I think they are so helpful. The first tip is put in the daily work, especially if you're new to trying to stop overcome binge eating. You have to put in the work, and that means daily commitments, whether that's pre-planning your food, pre-tracking it, pre-packing it. I have tips about that in a previous video that I will have up here for you to watch, and that video I think talks about this a little more in depth, but basically put in the daily work for setting yourself up for food success, and then at the same time also put in the daily work mentally to be committed to overcoming binge eating. You saw me just now refer to, the fact that I'm like writing in this workbook, and I do, a couple of pages of this workbook every day, and that helps me prepare for the next day of challenges because my binge eating disorder urges don't go away, like they're still here. The fact that I'm still fighting them shows that I've got to keep putting in the work. And even if you are putting in the work and you're smooth sailing and you haven't binged for a while, several months or whatever, still keep putting in the work because you don't know when you will be vulnerable. So put in the daily work, be committed to it. If it's that important to you, and if you suffer from binge eating disorder, it's probably like a huge deal to you, then put in that work because it's so worth it. Tip number 2 is when you feel an urge to binge, feel dispassionate about it. Feel clinical about it. Try to withhold your emotion when you're looking at your urge to binge. Look at it as, oh, I'm feeling an urge to binge, and that's it. Try not to put any anger behind it or any deep emotion because that assigns more power to that urge to binge. We're going to talk about that in a second, but for now, just know that when you feel the urge to binge, literally just observe it. Observe it without any passion, without any emotion attached to it, because that's going to help you overcome it. So that's tip 2. Tip 3 is recognize and acknowledge that your urge to binge is simply an urge and it's meaningless. Catherine Hansen in the book Brain Over Binge, in fact, in her podcast, which by the way, that's another sidebar, I highly recommend the Brain Over Binge podcast. Literally start with episode 1. You can start at the latest episodes. I think right now they're on episode 90 something. You can do that, but I've listened to a few of the more recent episodes, but I'm going back to the beginning and I'm listening to episode 1 all the way through episode 10 because I feel like it sets up the foundation for success. They really talk about how your urge to binge is simply neurological junk. It's literally just a brain-based bad habit that your lower brain keeps putting out because it thinks you need it to survive. And so when you recognize that that urge to binge is simply just this meaningless neurological piece of junk that's just like, oh, it's just a thought, then you don't have to act upon it. That really gives you this sense of empowerment. It really helps you realize you can overcome this. Let's say you're in the middle of a business meeting. I've used this analogy before, and in fact, I'm stealing this analogy from Dr. Glenn Livingston with the Never Binge Again book. I think I have the link in the description box below to get his free ebook, Never Binge Again. But I know he's used the analogy before of, let's say you're in a business meeting and you suddenly have the urge to pee. You don't just pee on yourself in the middle of that business meeting. You recognize that you have the urge to pee, but you're like, I'm going to wait until this meeting is over to go pee. You know, maybe that's not the best or most professional analogy, but it makes sense. You feel a lot of urges throughout the day to do things that you're not just going to go do. He even said, this is a funny one to me. He said, when I see a pretty woman walking down the street, I may feel the urge to go kiss her. But I know that I'm not just going to walk up to a stranger and suddenly start kissing her. I'm going to go to jail, you know? And he was like, that's how the urge to binge can be. It's like you recognize that it's there, but you don't act upon it, right? So I thought that was a kind of funny set of analogies that were helpful to me, and I hope it helps you. Also, just a brief sidebar on this too. Just because you have the urge to binge, it is meaningless. You don't need deep therapy to overcome it. That's one of the misconceptions that Catherine Hansen talks about a lot. She's like, a lot of times people will say, you need to get to the root of your problem. Why do you have the urge to binge? Did your mom not love you enough? She's like, you don't need all that. That's not bad. It's never a bad thing to do therapy, but don't think that therapy is gonna, get to the cause and help you stop binge eating. She's like, let's cut to the heart of the matter, cut to the chase, and recognize that it is neurological junk that you do not need to act upon. Tip number 4 is realize that binge urges are powerless. They are powerless. You have the power at all times. And this is the summary of the brain over binge and the never binge again philosophy, which is your urges to binge are driven by your lower brain. Your lower brain is like your survival Neanderthal brain. That's your brain that evolved over time. Your higher brain, however, which is your higher thinking, long-term goals brain, the brain that really wants the best for you, that's the brain that's in control. Whenever you do any bodily action, it's your higher brain that does it. So recognize that even though your lower brain sends you urges, it's your higher brain that regulates every single thing that you do. So your higher brain has power at all times. And even though you feel the urge to binge, your higher brain's in control and your higher brain can choose not to act upon it. That's the premise of why the urges to binge are powerless. They're meaningless and they're powerless. So these final 3 tips are right here on page 82 on the Brain Over Binge Recovery Guide. The 5th thing to recognize is that the urges to binge are harmless. They aren't there to hurt you. They aren't your enemy. And that was a kind of game-changing shift for me to look at them that way, because I've always been angry about my urges. Like, why? Oh no, why? How do I have these? And this is making my life miserable and I can't stop binging and blah, blah, blah. Realize that they're harmless. They're literally there as a survival mechanism. It's literally your lower brain trying to protect you. So that can help you with tip number 2, which is looking at your binge eating urges dispassionately and clinically and just observe them and don't attach emotion to them. When you recognize that these urges to binge are harmless, that they're meaningless, they're powerless, and they're harmless, that can really help you feel like simply clinical observation. Like, I feel the urge to binge. Oh, I see, that's an urge to binge. I can dismiss it. I can detach from it. Literally just be like, nope, not acting upon that. That's an urge to binge. I choose not to act upon it. It's that simple. So these 5 tips have helped me so much. And I have remained binge-free for a little while now, not like forever, because let's face it, I suffer from binge eating disorder, and this is a work in progress for me. It may be for you too, but I'm telling you, these tools and resources and tips and tricks, these are helping me a lot. So I wanted to share them with you to see if that they will help you. If they've helped you, comment below, or if you have any additional tips for anybody that's watching this video, drop a comment, because this is a community we've got to share with each other. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, because I come at you weekly with new content. I'm currently doing WW, and it's working really well for me. I made a name for myself with Bright Line Eating. I'm not doing that, but a lot of my previous content is about Bright Line Eating. I talk a little bit about how that program I think is too low calorie. It can actually contribute to the urge to binge, which is something that Catherine Hansen has talked about. She's like, you've got to eat adequately in order to help eliminate those urges to binge. So something to think about. Meantime, I love you so much. Thank you for tuning in for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.